This video talks about diffusion, one of the mechanisms of membrane transport. But before that, let's recall something you've learned in S1. In S1, you've learned that all things are made up of particles. Moreover, these particles are constantly moving. Now, let's think about this experiment you have probably forgotten. Here is a beaker of water, and in the beaker of water, there are some colored salts added. Now, after some time, even if you don't stir the mixture, the color is going to spread throughout the whole of the beaker. So the whole beaker of water will turn red. Why is this the case? Because particles are constantly moving, and not only moving, but they move from a region of high concentration to low concentration. So most of the salt particles will move from its original position to parts of the beaker with less of the salt. Eventually, the salt will be evenly distributed among the whole beaker, causing it to be red. Now let's think about this phenomenon in the context of the cell. Here is your cell, and assuming that you've consumed just a sugary dessert, after digestion and absorption, the amount of sugar or the sugar concentration outside the cell will be higher than that inside the cell. Now, because the sugar molecules outside of the cell are constantly moving, so eventually they will go from a high concentration region to a low concentration region. So that is from outside of the cell into the inside of the cell, until the concentration inside and outside the cell becomes the same. Now, this type of movement of substances is called diffusion. Diffusion is one of the most common ways of things to go into the cell. And it doesn't require any energy because it happens spontaneously. This is just the way how particles like to move. So to recap, the definition of diffusion is as follows. It is the movement of substances from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. This process happens spontaneously, it happens naturally, and it doesn't require any energy. We call it a passive process. Passive processes don't require energy, whereas active processes require energy. So in the case of sugar diffusing from outside of the cell to the inside of the cell, we said that just now it happens until the concentration of both sides sort of becomes the same. However, after it becomes the same, the particles will continue to move around, in and out. However, the concentration remains the same for both sides. So at this point, you will have particles going from outside of the cell to the inside of the cell, and also from the inside of the cell to the outside of the cell. There will always be a constant movement of sugar molecules. It's just that there will not be any net movement. So the molecules are still moving, but then you don't have a direction of whether it's coming from inside to out or outside to inside. The number of molecules moving into the cell will be the same of the number of molecules moving out of the cell. Finally, let's think about what makes diffusion fast or slow, or what affects the rate of diffusion. The first factor is temperature. When the temperature is higher, the rate of diffusion will also be high. This is because when temperature is high, it means that the particles have more kinetic energy. And having more kinetic energy means that the particles will move faster. The second factor is the size of the particles. If you have smaller particles, the diffusion rate will be higher. This is easy to understand because small things tend to move faster.